There is a silent contract shaping your life, one you never signed, never negotiated, and never consciously agreed to. Yet you live by it every single day. It dictates what you tolerate, what you pursue, what you avoid, and even what you believe you deserve. You didn't choose this contract, but your subconscious has been enforcing it for years. This contract began forming long before you had the language to describe your emotions. It emerged not through words, but through repetition, through the emotional atmosphere you lived in, the reactions of the people around you, the expectations placed on you, and the moments when your needs were met or ignored. Without realizing it, your mind learned to associate certain behaviors with safety, approval, or mere survival. And once those associations took root, your subconscious wrote its rules. Those rules sound like this: don't need too much. Stay quiet to avoid conflict. Be strong so no one leaves. Give more than you receive. Don't trust happiness. It doesn't last. Prepare for disappointment. You didn't choose these beliefs. They were installed. And because they were installed early, your subconscious treats them not as lessons from the past, but as laws of reality. Your mind follows them automatically, even when they contradict the life you want to build. This is why you may shrink around certain people, avoid opportunities you know you're ready for, or stay in situations that exhaust you. It's not a lack of courage. It's compliance with a contract you never consciously reviewed. The most unsettling part is this: your subconscious believes it is protecting you. Every limitation in the contract has a purpose, a psychological logic rooted in old emotional patterns. If being quiet once kept you safe, silence becomes a default. If pleasing others once prevented rejection, self-sacrifice becomes normal. If chaos was familiar, peace becomes threatening. The subconscious is not trying to sabotage you. It is trying to repeat what once worked, even if what worked no longer serves you. This contract influences not only how you act, but also how you interpret life. When someone shows affection, you might question it. When something good happens, you might wait for it to fall apart. When an opportunity appears, you might feel unworthy, all because the subconscious contract has predetermined what you are allowed to receive and what you are trained to expect. But there is something even deeper. You follow this contract because you don't know you're following it. You believe your reactions are natural, your fears are reasonable, your limits are stable. But much of what you call just how I am is actually how I learned to be. And nothing learned is permanent. Awareness is the first crack in the contract. Because the moment you see that these invisible rules are not truths, only memories, you begin to question them. And questioning them is the first step to rewriting them. You didn't sign this contract. You didn't negotiate its terms. You didn't even know it existed. And yet, you've been living by it your entire life. The subconscious contract forms in the quietest years of your existence, before logic, before self-awareness, before you were capable of questioning anything. Your brain, still developing and desperate for safety, became a recorder. Not of facts, but of emotions. And every repeated emotional experience became a clause in this invisible agreement. As a child, you weren't evaluating the world. You were absorbing it. If love came in consistently, your mind learned, I must earn connection. If anger came suddenly, it learned, I must stay small to stay safe. If your needs were ignored, it learned, my feelings are secondary. And if you were praised only when useful, quiet, or strong, it learned, my value is conditional. These aren't memories, they're rules. Rules that became the architecture of your identity. The subconscious contract is not written in sentences. It's written in emotional consequences. When you felt fear and someone withdrew, your brain wrote, don't express too much. When you were rejected for being authentic, it wrote, hide the real you. When you succeeded and someone minimized it, it wrote, don't shine too brightly. And the most powerful clause of all, do not change what keeps the peace. These rules were not created to imprison you. They were created to help you survive a world you had no power to control. Your brain optimized you for that environment. And because it believes that environment still exists, it continues enforcing the same conditions decades later. This is why you hesitate to speak up, why you downplay your needs, why you choose what feels familiar even when it hurts, why you stay where your potential slowly dissolves. You're not weak. You're loyal. Loyal to rules you never knew you were following. And here's the part most people never realize. The subconscious contract doesn't just shape your behavior. It shapes your perception. You see opportunities as threats. You interpret affection as danger. You mistake discomfort for failure. You translate new as unsafe, even when it's the gateway to everything you want. Your brain isn't sabotaging you. It's trying to protect the version of you who needed these rules to survive. The problem is that you're not that person anymore, but the contract hasn't been updated. And because it operates below awareness, you don't question it. You simply obey, until now. Recognizing the contract is the first fracture in its structure. Once you see that these rules were created by a child, for a child, in a world that no longer exists, something fundamental shifts. You realize you're no longer obligated to follow it. And in the next part, you'll uncover the psychological loop that keeps this contract active, and how to break the cycle from the inside out. Most people believe they continue living inside their old patterns because they haven't healed enough, haven't tried hard enough, or haven't found the right motivation. But the truth is far more intricate and far more subtle. What keeps you tied to the subconscious contract isn't just the memories that created it, but the machinery your mind built around it. A self-reinforcing system designed to protect the contract at all costs. This system begins with emotional prediction. Your brain constantly scans for anything that resembles an old wound, a tone of voice, a change in someone's expression, the slightest variation in behavior. Before anything even happens, the brain anticipates danger based on past experiences. And once it anticipates danger, it behaves as if the threat is real. Fear becomes a prophecy that fulfills itself. Then comes emotional rehearsal. Your subconscious replays familiar emotional states because it knows how to survive inside them. Anxiety, guilt, hypervigilance, self-doubt. These emotions may exhaust you, but they are predictable. And predictability feels safer than peace. So the brain cycles through old emotions like a ritual, renewing the contract silently, day after day. Next, the mind creates internal narratives that strengthen the emotional cycle. These narratives feel like logic, but they are constraints disguised as wisdom. Don't open up. You'll be disappointed again. Don't try too hard. You won't succeed. Don't trust this piece. Something always goes wrong after. It's better to lower your expectations. Life hits harder when you hope. These aren't thoughts, they are strategies, crafted by a younger version of you who had fewer resources, less clarity, and more fear. The stories remain because the subconscious believes abandoning them means exposing you to danger. And to ensure you don't question the contract, the brain uses one more mechanism: identity preservation. Your mind quietly tries to keep your life aligned with who you learned you were, not who you are now. If the contract taught you that you must be responsible for everything, the brain will make you overfunction in every area of life. If the contract taught you that you must expect little, the brain will sabotage anything that feels too good. If the contract taught you that you are difficult to love, the brain will filter out every sign of affection and magnify every sign of rejection. This isn't dysfunction. This is loyalty. Loyalty to a version of you that once needed protection. And here is the most paradoxical part. The subconscious contract survives because it still believes you are the same person who signed it. It doesn't recognize your growth. It doesn't register your strength. It doesn't understand that you have new tools, new awareness, new possibilities. Your brain is protecting an outdated identity. But the moment you begin to witness the loop, the predictions, the rehearsals, the narratives, the identity traps, the system begins to lose its authority. Awareness weakens the machinery. And when the machinery weakens, the contract begins to dissolve. You cannot break what you cannot see. But once you see it, you are no longer bound to obey it. The subconscious contract feels unbreakable because it wasn't formed through conscious decisions. It was formed through emotional repetition. And anything built through repetition gains authority. It becomes the default, the familiar, the invisible framework through which you navigate life. But here's the truth your mind never learned to consider. No contract can survive once you stop unconsciously renewing it. The moment awareness enters, the automatic renewal ends. Breaking the contract doesn't begin with force. It begins with recognition, not trying to change the entire structure at once, but noticing the micro moments where the contract tries to reassert itself. The moment you shrink your voice, the moment you apologize for existing, the moment you say, "It's fine," when it isn't, the moment you dismiss something good because you fear losing it. These are not flaws. They are signatures, emotional signatures of an old agreement. And your job is not to fight them, but to witness them. Awareness interrupts obedience. When you pause and observe the old impulse without following it, even for a second, something extraordinary happens. The brain hesitates, the contract hesitates, the automatic script loses momentum. And in that hesitation, a new possibility quietly emerges. The possibility of choosing differently. Change doesn't come from rewriting the whole contract at once. Change comes from rewriting the next line. For example, when the contract whispers, "Don't ask for too much," your new line becomes, "My needs are valid." When the contract insists, "Stay small to stay safe," your new line becomes, "I am safe even when I expand." When the old rule says, "You don't deserve more," the new line says, "I decide my worth now, not the past." These new lines do not erase the contract immediately, but they weaken its authority. Every time you choose a new response, even a tiny one, you are renegotiating an ancient agreement Your subconscious once considered non-negotiable, and eventually the old rules stop feeling like truth and start feeling like what they always were. Remnants of a younger self doing the best they could with what they had. And here is the part people rarely understand. Breaking the contract is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the person you always were before fear rewrote your identity. Your authentic self has been waiting beneath layers of protection, silence, and self-containment. Not a louder version, not a more confident performance, but the version of you who doesn't make decisions from fear, obligation, or emotional debt. The version of you who can experience life without constantly predicting pain. When the contract dissolves, life doesn't suddenly become easy, but it becomes yours. Decisions feel cleaner. Relationships feel more honest. Your voice stops trembling. Your boundaries become natural rather than defensive, and opportunities that once terrified you begin to feel possible, because you are no longer acting out of survival. You are acting out of choice. And if something inside you recognized the contract while listening to this, if a memory surfaced, a pattern suddenly made sense, or an internal rule revealed itself, then you are already beginning to break it. If you're ready to take ownership of your mind again, write in the comments. I am ready to rewrite my contract. Because naming the intention is not symbolic. It is the first conscious signature of a new agreement. A contract aligned with who you are becoming, not who you had to be to survive.